Good morning, everyone. Before we start the program, let me introduce myself. My name is Parveen Banu, and I am a student of the Department of Disability Studies, Rabindra Bharati University, Kolkata, India. I take this opportunity to welcome you all on the fourth day of the week-long international webinar on vulnerable groups and human rights, jointly organized by the Department of Human Rights and Human Development and Department of Disability Studies, Rabindra Bharati University. To begin with, it is my privilege to request the coordinator of the Department of Human Rights and Human Development of Rabindra Bharati University, Dr. Payal Rai Chaudhary Dutt, to deliver the welcome address. Over to you, ma'am.
Um, well, thank you, Parveen, and thank you to Victoria, Avishek, Pubali, and Upasna for putting us this together. Without your technical expertise, this was not possible. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and a very warm welcome to all the people from around the world who have signed up for our first virtual conference and have logged in now for the YouTube live streaming. While day one of this international webinar on vulnerable groups and human rights was convened on the International Disability Day on the theme of the same standpoint, day two and three investigated vulnerability through the lens of gender, particularly women and girls and children, through the very many interesting papers and discussions. On day four, that's today, we continue to explore vulnerability. We have all witnessed how the world has quickly pivoted when faced with this unprecedented pandemic. However, there are still too many people whose sad story of neglect and isolation perhaps stands exacerbated as never before. The elderly persons. The pandemic is putting older persons at greater risk of poverty, discrimination, and isolation. And on older persons of developing countries, it is likely to have a particularly devastating impact. To discuss these and many others in these extraordinary times, we have amongst us today two giants in their fields. The first of our two very esteemed resource persons today is an eminent expert in the areas of development, international relations, protection mechanisms, and constitution, Professor Manik Chakraborty. As professor of law at Burdwan University for a very, very long time, Professor Chakraborty has been instrumental in rearing a whole generation of human rights teachers, activists, and committed advocates spread the world over. From organizing perhaps one of the very first refresher courses on human rights in the region to going around the country advising and lecturing on issues of rights and development to publishing books, one of them titled Human Rights and Anthology. Professor Chakraborty has promoted, inspired, and strengthened the academic discipline of human rights in a peerless and yet in a fatherly manner, continuing to remain very busy post superannuation as advisor to the Amity Law School and the Board of Studies at several universities. I have the personal honor of having today here as the speaker, and I thank you wholeheartedly for so readily and warmly accepting our invitation to speak this morning. I now have another great privilege and a deep honor to welcome a prolific writer, an avid researcher, and expert known around the world in the areas of human rights, humanitarian law, international institutions, refugees, and IDPs. Professor Manoj Kumar Sinha, his critical insight informs many a policy blueprint of the government. As director to the nation's premier institution, Indian Law Institute, Professor Sinha has a very rich repertoire of critical academic insight that has been very, very widely published, nationally and internationally. Also, the former professor of law at the West Bengal National University of Juridical Sciences, I can tell you that there was never a class with Professor Sinha teaching human rights which students would not flock to. And the same could not be said of very many of us. His passion in this area is perhaps instrumental in getting him to be here with us despite a very busy schedule. Thank you, sir, once again, and welcome. Together with Professor Chakraborty, and I have to say you, Both of you have made a world of difference to the world of human rights education. I also extend a very warm welcome to Professor Bishnu Podanando of Jadavpur University, Department of Education, who is the chair of the subsequent session. And an especially warm welcome to all the paper presenters for today. We really look forward to your discussions. Welcome you all once again to this very august occasion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your wonderful words to begin today's session. Today, we are having the panel on senior citizens, and we will now proceed towards the invited lecture session. I would like to request all the participants to post their questions in the chat box, which our esteemed resource persons shall address at the end of the session. To begin with, I would now like to invite Professor Manik Chakraborty, the advisor of Amity Law School, Kolkata, India. He has a total teaching experience of 28 years. He was a professor at the Department of Law in the University of Burdwan and also the director of UGC Academic Staff College in the University of Burdwan. He was the former head of Department of Law of University of Burdwan as well. Apart from that, he has been a member of University Statute Committee of University of Burdwan, PG Post of Studies in Law, Assam University, Silchar, Faculty Council of Law, Guwahati University, Assam, Calcutta University Inspection Team for approval of PG studies in law, etc. Presently, he is acting as the editor-in-chief of India International Journal of Judicial Sciences, published by Paragon International Publishers, New Delhi. He has completed his PhD in human rights from the University of Burdwan, West Bengal. The areas of his specialization include international law, human rights, and family law. Welcome, sir. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Uh, Good morning to all of you. I'm so much, have become so emotional after hearing the so warm welcome by Professor Payal, who is so dear to me for many years. She is so active, and I feel really it's a great honor to me because, today I'm also a senior citizen, and being a senior citizen, I have been given, the task to say something about, you know, myself or my community, when we have become senior citizen. It's a great honor to me, and also a great privilege to speak, before the August gatherings and audience here, and those who are waiting, this hearing this webinar. And really, I first of all, I convey my gratitude to Professor Subhashachi Basu Rai Chaudhuri, Vice Chancellor of Rabindranath Bharati University. Then my warm congratulations to Payal Rai Chaudhuri, Coordinator Department of Human Rights, and also Mr. Sanjay Kumar Yadav, Coordinator Department of Disability Studies, those who are organizing this so important webinar on human rights violations of various vulnerable groups. And this is very interesting that this whole program has been started from 3rd January, and it will continue till the 10th of 3rd December, and it will continue till 10th December. That is the day when the whole world will celebrate the World Human Rights Day, 10th December. Okay, so really it's a great honor. I'm thankful to the organizer to give me this honor and privilege to speak for a few minutes on the topic senior citizens and human rights. As I told you that who is a senior citizen, if we discuss about this, then yeah, senior citizen means any person who has attained the age of 60 or above, whether it is India or any country. Normally 60 years and above, they are being treated as senior citizens or elderly people or elder people. Now really I must say that aging is a natural process which is inevitable and natural in human life cycle, and to which no species is an exception. Indian culture recognizes the parent's status as that of God, saying Matru Devo and Pitru Devo Bhava. Conventional norms and beliefs of our society lay stress on providing due care and attention to the elderly. Now, one very interesting conversation from Mahabharata I want to quote here, which is very interesting and relevant, to this discussion. The great scholar of the time says Kaushika left his home and acquired vast knowledge of scriptures. Once he met an ordinary meat seller called Dharmavyada. Kaushik was deeply impressed by the devotion and perfection with which the meat seller was executing his work. Dharmavyada invited the revered Brahmin to his home. After knowing the story of the scholar, the meat seller engaged in conversation with him, which was an eye-opener to the great says and has a lot of significance even for us also. Dharmavyada told Kaushik, in not keeping your parents happy, your devotion to knowledge is of no consequences. It is a waste. Dharmaveda again went on telling, go and serve your parents, O learned Brahmana. I see no dharma greater than that. This extraordinary piece of conversation is significant in more than one way. Not only does it establish the basic moral anchoring of our society that gave greater premium to the service of parents than acquiring the highest height of knowledge, it also suggests that it was the ordinary citizen, that mid sailor in this case, and not the intellectual class of society who have been the custodians of this tradition of caring for old persons and parents. However, but if we take this case of present day, of course, present day world is completely different now, as also we are seeing and experiencing about this. The elderly people who enjoyed better respect and security in the earlier period nowadays are increasingly deprived from the basic dignity and human rights. Their rights such as protection, participation, and image are threatened, and old age are being, brings them lots of difficulties along with itself, whether physical, mental, or financial. Of course, population aging is a global phenomenon. Virtually every country in the world is experiencing growth in the size and proportion of the older persons in their population. There are nearly 703 million persons, elder persons during 2019, as I have got from statistics, and the number of older persons is projected to be double to 1.5 billion in 2050. So just imagine the situation of the you know population. Today, about two-thirds of all older people are living, of course, in developing countries like India and other countries. And by 2025, it will be almost 78% of the population. Women outlive men in virtually all societies. Consequently, in very old days, the ratio of women to men is 2 to 1. Now, throughout the world, large number of older persons face challenges such as discrimination, poverty, as just now Payal has mentioned that during the COVID-19 pandemic, it is the older persons, those who are confined to home, those who have lost their jobs, those who are totally lost their freedom to go out and to mix with the people, to enjoy their life, and right to liberty is now almost restricted due to this coronavirus pandemic. So now it is very unfortunate, the world has not been quick to respond. A lack of political will and the prioritization of the special rights of the disadvantaged groups have often been at the expense of the case for older people. In a climate where the human rights field has been increasingly specialized, disadvantaged groups such as children, women, migrant workers, persons with disabilities, they have had their particular needs recognized by the United Nations. But unfortunately, the section, vulnerable section, that is the older people, they have been left out, of course. More and more people argue it is now high time that the older persons were also identified as a distinct category of vulnerable group, deserving special care and attention under human rights law in the world. due to the physical and mental ailments that accompany the old age. The elderly may face issues such as difficulty in maintaining independence. They also become socially isolated or depressed. Besides the loss of physical capabilities, mental capacity and greater economic vulnerability are unique to this aging population and call for greater attention to the whole world. Of course, as we know that all of us know that in 1948, the United Nations has adopted the Magna Carta of modern human rights, that is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And though it is directly, not, has not mentioned about the elderly people, but in Article 25, Clause 1, it is clearly mentioned that states that everyone has the right to security in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age, or other lack of livelihood in circumstances beyond his control. In the International Covenant of Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, 1966, and also International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, of course, we get no mention about this. But however, the Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, adopted General Comment number 6. In addition to that, adopting General Comment 6, the committee also took the responsibility of monitoring the implementation of protections for the elderly, as well as promoting and protecting the economic, social, and cultural rights of the elderly people within the member states. And in doing so, of course, this committee became the first United Nations mechanisms, I should say, to specially focus on these elderly people of the world. Among the core human rights treaties, as we have found, there are CEDAW and all these things. I must mention here that the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, CRPD, offers perhaps the most useful protection for the older persons as if we go through Article 19, 20, Article 25, 28 of the Convention. Now, it is very important to say here that in 1982, the International Plan of Action on Aging was adopted at the 1982 World Assembly on Aging in Vienna. The plan focused on ways to assist and protect the elderly people and was later implemented through the five principles of independence, participation, care, self-fulfillment, and dignity by the United Nations Principle for Older Persons. Most recently, and in follow-up to the Vienna World Assembly, the International Plan of Action was adopted by 159 countries at the Second World Conference on Aging was held in Madrid in 2002. Now, of course, I should say that the International Plan of Action puts primary responsibility, of course, on national governments to put the plan into action by developing and implementing policies to ensure economic and social protection for older people, promoting and ensuring their good health, and making services and housing available to them and also accessible to the justice. In general, of course, I should say the goal of the International Plan of Action is to eliminate neglect, abuse, and violence towards these millions of older people, those who are living in this world. Here, I must mention that with this world's population of elderly rapidly growing, an international response to elderly abuse is necessary to prevent an increase in its incidence and prevalence. An international treaty is most needed of the day because till now the United Nations could not adopt any convention or any international treaty addressing the rights and needs of these elderly people who are suffering from violation of their human rights in the world. So it would do this by forcing party governments. If we take this treaty, then the parties governments to create new laws or change existing laws in order to put the treaty into effect at national level. Of course, I must mention here that in 2010, of course, the General Assembly of the United Nations, established one open-ended working group on aging for the purpose of strengthening the protection of the human rights for elderly persons. And so I hope that this working group will also help to adopt one international convention so that for the protection of these senior citizens, elderly people, so that they can also get the justice in the world. So, for the India's concern, let me say that ironically, in India, the old generations are not aware of their human rights, till today, due to high prevalence of illiteracy and lack of awareness. If we go to rural areas, millions of people, those who are living in villages, they have hardly any idea about their rights as an old people. They are totally cornered, living an isolated life, and also suffering from different inequalities, what we have seen in India. And most probably, of course, I must say here that with fast changing socio-economic scenario, industrialization, rapid urbanization, the increasing participation of women in the workforce, roots of all traditional joint family system has become now a thing of the past. And in such changing situation, a majority of the older people in India, you know, who have passed most part of their life with joint family, are on the verge of isolation in old age. Even basic needs and rights of many of them are not addressed. In India, most of the older people are the victims of economic insecurity, physical and psychological insecurity, abuse, torture, health and medical insecurity, if we take the data from the current way as we find. And it is interesting to note that as per 2011 census, citizens over the age of 60 years in India, comprise 8.6%, and by 2050 it will be around 21% of the India's population. So this is a big issue now, of course, that we have to think seriously. Here, of course, I must mention that Indian Constitution, besides Article 21, I must mention that Article 41, which is mentioned in Part 4 of the Indian Constitution as directive principles of state policy, there, of course, declares in a very clear way that the state shall, within the limits of economic capacity and development, make effective provision for securing the right to work, to education, and to public assistance in case of unemployment, old age, sickness and disablement. Of course, if we take the personal laws, of course, in Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act 1956, Section 20, of course, mentions about the care and protection of the aged parents by their children, and also in Muslim law we get some examples. And here I must say that you see, the government of India has adopted one national policy for older persons on 31st January 1999 in order to accelerate welfare measures and empowering the elderly people in ways beneficial for them. Here, of course, policy included like setting up of a pension fund for ensuring security for those persons who have been serving in the unorganized sector, construction of old age homes, then establishment of resource centers and re-employment bureaus for people above 60 years. Then the Ministry also of Social Justice and Empowerment has also set up a national council for older persons in the process to make life easier for the older persons. Now, it is very important to mention here that due to the initiative taken by the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment in 2007, our Parliament has enacted a very important legislation in this regard, that is the Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizens Act 2007. Now, this act makes it a legal obligation, of course, for children and heirs to provide maintenance to senior citizens and parents by providing monthly allowance and taking due care and attention. The Act also provides simple, speedy, and inexpensive mechanism for the protection of life and property of the older persons. The main attraction of this Act, I should say, is there are provisions to protect the life and property of such persons. This Act also provides setting up of old age homes for providing maintenance to the indigent senior citizens and parents. Now, of course, a senior citizen, including parent, who is unable to maintain himself from his own earning or out of the property owned by him, now it is entitled to get relief under this Act. The children, grandchildren are under obligation to maintain his or her parents, father, mother, or both. Likewise, relative of a senior citizen is also bound to look after the senior citizen. If such children or relative is not maintaining his parents, or senior citizen respectively, then the parents can seek the assistance of tribunal constituted under this act. Such parents can file an application before the tribunal claiming maintenance and other reliefs from their children as the case may be. Such application for maintenance, of course, should be disposed of within 90 days from the date of service of notice of application to the respondent, as it mentioned in this act. Now, so far the act is concerned, here, of course, another important part of this act, the provision I should mention that senior citizen, if a senior citizen after the commencement of this act has transferred his property, either movable or immovable, which is very common in our Indian family system, by way of gift or otherwise, subject to the condition that the transferee shall provide him basic amenities and physical needs, and thereafter such transferee refuses or fails to provide such promise, then such transfer of property shall be deemed to have been made by fraud, coercion, or undue influence, and the tribunal can declare such transfer as void. This is a very important provision, of course, incorporated in this Act of 2007. And further, abandoning a senior citizen in any place by a person who is having his care or protection, then is a criminal offense now, and such person shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 3 months or fine or both. So this is very important, of course, here. And in this context, I must mention that in West Bengal, of course, in 2008, the government of West Bengal has adopted one rules, West Bengal Maintenance and Welfare Parents and Senior Citizen Rules 2008. And interestingly, here, in this rule, a tribunal, maintenance tribunal, has been established, which will be presided over by the subdivisional officer. And as per Section 5 of this rule, no court fee or charge shall be payable by the senior citizens, when they are filing any petition before this court tribunal. And at the same time, also there is a provision for appellate tribunal, which will be presided over by the district magistrate of the district. And also there is a provision for nominating conciliation officer by the state government with the consultation, to the district magistrate of the district. Now, another important factor I've seen that in this act, so for the maximum allowance of maintenance, it has been provided 10,000 rupees, per month. Now, another, and plus, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India, on the provision of that. Also, there is a provision for maintaining old age homes in each district of West Bengal. So for the state level monitoring committee is concerned, also one state level monitoring committee also has been established. And another very important thing I must say here, point, that every senior citizen now is being now eligible for getting one senior citizen card or certificate. Link has been provided for that, and it can be submitted to the Commissioner, Municipal Corporation, Kolkata, or it can be sent by post to the Secretary, Women and Child Development and Social Welfare Department, Director of Social Welfare, Salt Lake City, Kolkata, West Bengal. And this particular senior citizen card is very important for the senior citizen people, older people, because by the help of this card, they can at least get the railway, air concession and all, and they can also get other concessions, medical and all, in hospitals and others. Now, it is of course important to note that due to certain lacuna in this Act of 2007, then an amendment to this Act has been proposed in 2019, the Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizen Amendment Bill 2019, which has been submitted before the Lok Sabha in last parliamentary session, and of course it is pending now before the parliament, and where of course some important radical changes have been made on the Act of 2007. For example, so far the definition of children is concerned, now the bill brings stepchildren, adoptive children, children-in-law under the definition of children. Another important factor, which is mentioned in this amendment bill, that is regarding the remove of the upper limit of maintenance, on the maintenance fee of 10,000 rupees per month. Now, under this bill, of course, that has been removed, and now any amount can be paid as maintenance depending on the economic condition of the parents and also economic condition of the children. Besides, of course, if the children or relative fails to comply with maintenance order, the tribunal may also issue warrant now to levy the due amount. Failure to pay such fine may lead to imprisonment up to 1 month or until the payment is made in this course. And the bill also provides for the regulation of private care homes for senior citizens and institutions providing home care services, which is also very, very important. Now, with this, of course, though the bill is pending before the parliament, so I'm sure that our government, which is a welfare government, and as our constitution mentions in the preamble, that the state will try to secure justice to all, economic justice, social justice, political justice. So I'm sure the government will fulfill this dream of B.R. Babasaheb Ambedkar and the framers of the constitution very soon. Of course, I must say that it is very important to note that older persons are respected in society in general, but within their individual families, majority of the older persons feel isolated on many occasions. So this is now high time that we should think it very seriously, because today, if I am young, tomorrow I will be old. So I believe that it is the duty of all people, whether he is young or older, he is a senior or not, to take care of the people, all people, to protect and the human rights of all people, so that everybody can be happy. Because ultimately, the goal of human rights is that sarve bhavantu sukhina, let all people be happy. With these words, again, I congratulate the organizers of this international webinar, who are taking due care to organize this such a beautiful program, where many important human rights aspects have been chosen to discuss and deliberate, and today is one of them. So with this belief and hope, this discussion will be a grand success. And my dear friend Professor Manoj Kumar Sinha will be speaking now. So with due regards to Professor Manoj Kumar Sinha, and also with warm congratulations to Payal and her team. So I now thank you all for giving me this honor and privilege. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for elucidating the day's subject quite efficiently. Your words are indeed thought-provoking and enlightening. Our next esteemed speaker for this panel is Professor Manoj Kumar Sinha, the Director of Indian Law Institute in New Delhi, India. Professor Manoj Kumar Sinha is the Director of Indian Law Institute, New Delhi. He was a former professor of law at the West Bengal National University of Judicial Sciences. He did his doctorate in international law from the Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, LLM from the University of Nottingham, and LLB from the University of Delhi. His areas of specialization are human rights, international humanitarian and refugee law, international criminal law, international institutions, and constitutional law. He has published extensively in the field of international law, international relations, constitutional law, international human rights, and international humanitarian and refugee law in reputed Indian and international law journals. He also serves as the member of the editorial boards of various reputed national and international journals. Professor Sinha is also a member of research bodies of many universities in India and abroad. Welcome, sir. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Parveen. Professor Payal, Professor Manik Chakravarti. I congratulate Rabindra Bharati University, and particularly Department of Human Rights and Human Development and Department of Disability Studies. Professor Manik Chakravarti, in his excellent presentation, he covered almost everything, and Payal may agree with me that what sir will speak and what sir will say, because Manikda has covered almost every aspects which I have noted, and I thought I'll say on that particular. Taking note of the Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizens Act. Then he has also talked about the bill which is pending, and some changes will be introduced. He spoke about the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act, that is Section 20. Sir has spoken Article 41 of the Constitution. So broadly, sir has covered everything. But the main primary question before us to ponder over, whether senior citizens issue can be resolved or can be solved effectively by the law. We have plenty of laws, and if you do empirical studies, you will find very few, like, despite whatever problems parents are facing at home, very few cases are reported to the under the to the police, or even to the invoked to the Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizens Act. So percentage, so maybe some reasons are people are not aware also, and then second is people are not willing to take this personal private matter to the public domain. So first thing we have to realize is the entire exercise which is happening, our concern is in a close a close house where it happens, and parents, because from the childhood they have spent entire their life taking care of the children, and they are not in a position, and they don't feel like going against the son and daughter for them, what they considered one point of time their obligation, their duties, their dharma, and because they have refused to do something, they don't feel like going to the court or other places. So that is the major issue is there. But it's become a big issue, and even if you go to the Constituent Assembly debate, this issue has not been addressed adequately, because that time members of the Constituent Assembly, they did not realize that one day this will become a big issue, senior citizenship. At that particular time, average age was 63, 64 people were dying. That was the maximum age. But over the years now, it has 74, 75 in Indian, and other countries it has crossed 80. All right, in other jurisdiction it has crossed the 80 years age. So they thought by 64, 65 people will go. So there's no need of thinking seriously about the protection of the senior citizen. However, as Manik sir has pointed out nicely, that Article 41 of the Directive Principle of State Policy puts some duty on the state. That is clearly stated under the Article 41 of the Constitution. That is very much there. If we start looking into the entire senior citizen issue in the human rights framework, without going into any other law, human rights framework means starting with the Part 3 of the Constitution, and also under the international human rights framework, this issue can be effectively dealt. Because human rights starts with the premises on the principle of non-discrimination. When we look into the principle of non-discrimination, and in fact, for a longer years, the treatment of the elderly person, treatment of the senior citizen has been addressed through the international human rights instruments on the ground of the principle of non-discrimination. If you look into the principle of non-discrimination, particularly as Manik sir has mentioned in his speech about the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, and also Universal Declaration of Human Rights, I take you further, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. What it says, Article 2, Paragraph 2, it talks about the non-discrimination, and it lays down number of grounds. And finally, one ground is the other status. Other status means it leaves it open. So disability for many years were covered under the other status, and also the senior citizens or elderly persons have been covered under the other status. So state has an obligation. When we talk about the human rights, state has an obligation under all human rights instruments to take care of everyone. You can't discriminate, because the utility of the person is no longer, then it's not the state State has state should not stop its duty. State has a duty to take care of these people also. But the state generally understood and generally believes it's a duty of the family, duty of the children to take care of the parents, and that is the reason even the maintenance and welfare of parents and the senior citizen, it talks about the duty of the children. It's like grandparent, now they have expanded. So also it's daughter-in-law, son-in-law, everybody can be the subject of the definition. So what we are saying, there's a duty of the family. So state says we have a minimum role when it comes to the treatment of the senior citizen. It is minimum role state's interference in this particular domestic affairs, and it heavily relies on the family. So family is made accountable. State is still so family is made accountable, children are made accountable, whereas state is still playing the second paddle, or is the second stage at the enter. Then when everything is collapsed, then state will come. So what we are witnessing, why it is happening? So what even the law which is in the place, it puts greater responsibility, greater accountability on the children, and on the other hand, state is the secondary. So what today is required in the 21st century, when we are talking about this subject in 2020, the role of the states are equally important. States have to play a very proactive role, otherwise things will remain same. Because children are there are a lot of factors. I don't see that only one factor. There are a number of factors, and which over the years created a hostile environment towards the family. What sir has also mentioned in his discussion, the first is the breaking of the joint family. If in Indian scenario you look into the breaking of the Indian family, breaking of the joint family. Second, migration for job, migration for the betterment of the for any profession. It is very common, and attachment to the place where you have born is gradually diminishing, because career perspective have become very important these days. So young people, young children, they want to go exploring entire world. It's not exploring in a country, they want to move out of everything. In that process, in search of their desire, their dream, they leave a lot of things behind, and gradually the things which hurts them, the things which comes into some kind of impediments in their progress, they try, because parents are equally very important. First they try to see that how they can take care of their parents. So they say, we will send you money, your account every month, some money will be there, that will be taken care, you don't worry, and they try to use their other relatives. But gradually the arrangement which children they make for their parents, that is the more temporary in nature, and after 10-15 years, a huge gap of the time, they completely ignore their family, they completely ignore their parents, because of they fail to recognize. We fail to recognize what Professor Manik Chakrabarty has mentioned. We fail to recognize one day we are also going to be the same stage. So it's a vicious circle. It's a circle where we all have to travel. So today me, next after 30-40 years my son. So but the aim and the desire is so huge today. They say you want to chase that dream, and in that process you leave a lot of things, your family, your friends, your society, or a lot of things to achieve. So that kind of things, and that has not come to the India because of the breaking of the family, because of the globalization. Now we are, in one hand, we are talking about the globalization. We are living in the global village. We in the play. So people move from one destination to far away, and then there are a lot of factors. So distance is creating a lot of problem is there. So what is important here, when parents are alone, where senior citizens are alone, there are a lot of problem they face. And if I give you an example, which we have seen in big cities, particularly in Delhi, Calcutta, metros and other places, where during the COVID-19, a nationwide lockdown was declared. In the first phase, I mean that on the 25th March onwards, the first thing, the big challenge for the elderly persons who were entirely depending for their medicine, for their food, for everything from the over the phone. They used to call and then person used to deliver. So their existence was from the outside, not because of the technology and because of the other facilities. The elderly person, they used to call outsider people. But when complete lockdown was there, neither people from outside, not from the inside. So that was a massive, huge challenge. So this was effectively managed by this society where they are living, neighbors they were living. The another major problem they faced when the case of the COVID-19 detected. What we see that case of and a poster is pasted outside their house. They were everybody, including neighbor, they prefer to keep a distance from the family or the elderly persons who are affected because of the COVID-19. So they had undergone, and they are still going, they have been undergoing with lot of difficulties and challenges during the COVID-19. I hope that things so even the policy makers, even the government has to take note of what kind of society people are living, what kind of persons is going to affected, who were and some alternative, some kind of arrangement has to be made. So what we this is the these are the challenges we see for the senior citizens. And senior citizen, the another important way that if children are taking care, the role of the state will be nowhere. If parents are happy, then state will never come into there. Most of the professors, most of the teachers, those who are at present 60 and plus 60 above, they have their pension, they can live happily without any financial support. What they need moral support. What they need that there are somebody taking care of them over the phone, talking to them. The more psychological, it's not it's not economical, it's a more psychological. And this psychological element will be only addressed by the family members. They don't want to harm their children by going to the court or here and there. They know that even if they have not written their will, this money, this property will go to their transfer, automatically will transfer to their legal heirs. So these are the so what they want to be treated at the age with everybody with respect, with dignity, and somebody takes care of over the phone. So even like a family, so this is obviously we are discussing about the law, but I feel it's a duty of individual, duty of the family members, duty of the all of us to take care of the elderly person, treat them with dignity. But what we see, even the university or colleges, a teacher of 40 years age, 60 years, he will come openly, and so a teacher who taught a student, and that student gradually joined the same university or same professor, and after 10 or 3-4 years, when his job is confirmed, the teacher who taught him, groom him anything, and after and then senior teacher is about to retire in 4-5 years, he will enter in a continuous fight and he will criticize the teacher. So we keep on witnessing, and you feel so harmed. And by sometimes I have done so much things for him, and what I was expecting from him, what I'm expecting from him, simply a respect, simply a recognition of the respect is, sir, you have done great, and I have learned a lot of things. And even if you have some differences can be put openly and frankly in a manner that can be so what I see, so we all are affected. You go in the classroom, you teach your students. Students are 17 years, 18 years in the law schools, or 20 years, even 3 years law school. You see their behavior, their conduct, and you see there are huge difference in the public schools, colleges, and private schools and colleges. The way we treat, the way young students treat their teachers, they say consumerism. We pay the money and the teachers are there to serve. So it's law will never ever to address all these things. So a teacher is whether you are in, so public is public is the public institution, there is a value, there is a culture. Because who goes there? Who attends the public schools or Rabindra Bharati University? Only the students whose parents are not in a position. So they always give an emphasis on the culture, on sanskar, human values. So they inculcated. So family spend huge time on the inculcating human values in their children. And these children, when they go to the school and colleges, and even if in Ravindra Bharati University or other Calcutta University, or even in the Bardhaman University, student will come and touch their feet of the teachers. I'm not saying and propagating this is just a way of regards. And that teacher makes very happy, and then he say very happy. And he relies, sometimes he relies more on his students or like neighbors, because of the amount of respect he has received from them. He feels I can always bank on him. When I'm in difficulties, I can call. Even my son is in Delhi or in abroad, but I can call this person. So this kind of human relation has to be built. That is the important thing. And then another, so like treatment conduct is very important. How you are treating, and that is the this Human Rights and Human Development and Department of Disability Studies. It has to be taught to all the students human values which are lacking, not the law. I feel Supreme Court gives a judgment, and we'll come to the judgment also. There are series of judgments of the Supreme Court. Judgments, so they delivered a judgment. Manik sir is reading, Payal is reading, I am reading, and I'm sharing this. But it has no in ground reality. It has little bit difficulty in implementation. There is no effective implementation. There is a problem. So to strengthen that particular gap, we have, at particularly in treatment of the senior citizen, we have to focus more on the values. We have to restore our glories. We have to restore our cultural practices. We have to also tell what is the So we have been taught from the childhood, you respect your senior, irrespective of their economic status. Even if he is a peon in your office, you must treat them dignity. And when you say dignity, that is the reason also I say. So first, point, you have to go right to dignity. So dignity is not because of the age. Dignity is not diluted. Dignity remains same. And what is I say? The elderly people have the inherent right to life, dignity, and the integrity of their persons, which shall be protected by law. So dignity, dignity is so very hard to define. Even if I say, and people say Article 21 include the right to live with dignity. It's not a right to life only. It talks a right to live with dignity, and series of cases, Supreme Court of India and High Courts also spoke about that importance of dignity. So dignity, state will treat you nicely, but dignity, you feel something you heard. आप हिंदी में कहते हैं कि मेरा स्वाभिमान को चोट लगा. Immediately you say, so you are like Soviman, so you have something in conscience which you feel hurt if you are not treated nicely. So integrity is very important in there. The second point, social security. Social security, in most of the cases, social security, what we see that state, and in India, social security particularly, there are a lot of people from the above. So we have two types of state. There are people, a large number of people, they don't have any support, and there are people who have economic issues not there, so they need more psychological. But there are other sections of the people in India, elderly people, they struggle for their life, they don't have sufficient resources, they depend on the state scheme, and the state has a lot of pension scheme and other scheme. But when you look into the pension scheme, you find in the village and other places elderly people. So we should not discuss and confine our treatment of senior citizens only to the white or the persons who are in the government servant and other. We have to also take note of the people, those who are living in the villages, those who are living in the remote places, those who are extremely poor. So there the role of the state becomes very important in the social security system. And social security, there are a lot of schemes are there which government of India is trying to visit, and what government of India has done between the 60 to 79. That's first. So those elderly, who are the elderly people, as sir has mentioned, above the 60 onwards, elderly people. So one group they have made in the villages, there are number of schemes. So 60 to 79 is there, 60 to 79 is the 200 rupees. And then after 79 onwards, 80 onwards, 500. So there are discussion is going on in there. Then another the important point, state has here the role of the police or state enforcement agency become very important, particularly in the metros, because as we discussed in the beginning, if I club both lecture together, I see the isolation. or they are living in the very vulnerable position because entire family members have moved. All the even 4 or 5 sons and daughters, they all have moved and far away, not in the from Calcutta to Bardhaman or Calcutta to Asansol. They moved from Calcutta to Hyderabad, some moved to the United States, some other places. A huge number of movement has taken place. So that elderly persons remain, only wife and husband, and sometimes even only the one person is there in the family. So they become very vulnerable in that particular stage. They always live in the fear. The moment somebody rings a bell, they are afraid. So there are a lot of the security system has been inserted. Parents are you are continuously on the CCTV to protect yourself. So there is a social security becomes very important to the vulnerable people. And we have rampant cases from the metropolitan cities where we see how their life was snatched by the thug, by the other people. So these kind of challenges are there. Security. So there the role of the security, because exploitation, abuse, or negligence. So there are even some abuse by the family members. So there the role of the state system becomes very important. There was a case and then court, Supreme Court. Just I'll conclude from there, and then I'll request we'll take the question also. The case was filed in the Supreme Court regarding the effective implementation of the various policies of the Government of India. And that case is Ashwani Kumar versus Union of India. And that was Supreme Court has given Justice Madan Lokur and Justice Deepak Gupta was social justice bench that matter they heard. And they had, so petitioners have raised flagged only the prayer was for the 4 important issues we have already discussed, but I see that a case was filed for the non-effective implementation of the 4 important aspects that is there. The first was pension for the elderly. So the court has looked pension for the elderly. Second, shelter for the elderly person. Pension for the elderly, shelter for the elderly, and geriatric care for medical facilities for the elderly. So medical health care is become very important is there. And last is effective implementation of the Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Citizenship Act. So you see that if today we are senior citizens, so what I see, protection is also very important from the if they are alone, the family members, some kind of, as sir has mentioned, some card is there. In Delhi there are schemes. So once you are senior, you are above 60%, you write to the police, local police will visit you every week, and they will beat constable will check continuously in your house that you are safe or you are fine. So so some schemes are there, which schemes were adopted by the police of local police to take care of the elderly persons, particularly the elderly persons where they are living alone and their son and daughters are far away. So as I said, that Ashwani Kumar, where Supreme Court has looked into that cases and then discussed about the pensions for the elderly persons. So pensions for the elderly persons becomes very important. A large number of even if the they have their own resources, but in some places, in some cities, children are not giving money to their parents. Children are creating a lot of problem for that, and they the minimum money is not handed over to the parents, and they live on their income. So house has been built by the father, but father is not in position to take the rent because the entire command of the house has been taken to the elder son or elder daughter, and parents are completely dependent despite their own property. So they need some kind of support. So that's pension for the elderly person. What I see, it's from the in the state we discussed, that elderly person pension for the that has to be increased. Shelter for the elderly person. So a lot of people are homeless also. So they need to their care should be taken, and right to adequate is, as sir has also mentioned, that Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights talks about and Article 11 of International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, and even under Indian Constitution Article 21, which says right to adequate standard of living, right to adequate standard of living that includes food, shelter, and clothing. So shelter is very important, and shelter, like those who are homeless, those who have no place to stay. State has now old age home and other kind of homes are there. Number of non-governmental organizations are also working in this field. Despite all these facilities, still problem is huge, and it needs to be addressed there. And of course, the medical care is very important, which we have seen in the large number of the elderly death. If you see that, and I'm sure when COVID-19 finally gets is over, we'll find a large number of people belongs to the seniors who death which happened during the COVID-19 is a large number of people. It's like a chunk of these senior citizens belong to that category. And effective implementation of the maintenance and welfare of the Senior Citizen Act, which Manikda has also said, this is in the process of amendment. Bill is 2019. There are a lot of change. Almost they have changed, rephrased. Almost they have changed, and hopefully the law will become more effective. But just to end, what I say, despite constitutional guarantees, constitution, even if you miss Article 41, Article 21 is available to the senior citizen. The justice, that preamble, it talks about social, economic, and political. It's available to the senior citizen. So constitutional guarantees there, statutory guarantees is there, and also international human rights instrument. The moment you born as a human being, human rights stay with you even after death. It's like, so decent burial is also, so even after death, is your rights are continuing. So rights should not be seized. So our rights should not be, application of rights should not be changed after 60 years age. So application of rights throughout the human being, and even after his his reputation, his respect in the society continues even if he passes away. If you look into the Copyright Act, which says moral and material benefits. So moral benefits means his name, his reputation. So when you are survived, your name is there. Even if you're dead, your name is there. So respect of the human rights, it the moment we're born as a human being, and even after death, it continues to remain there. So if we start looking into that direction, I'm sure things will change. But a great role, great responsibility is on us. As a student, as a teacher, as a human being, we have to address. We can't depend on the state. If change has to be taken from us, there are a lot of new development has taken place. Because of the globalization, mass movement of people are taking, migration is taking place. So there are a number of factors which is there, and that is the reason senior citizen, which were not considered before the 1945, even during after the end of Second World War, has become a big concern for in 2020. And I hope that things will improve, and we all will play a very important role in taking care of the all the senior citizens, and sooner or later we all reach on the same direction. I want to thank Payal. I want to thank all other associated with the program, and of course to Professor Manik Chakravarty. Thank you very much. There are questions, I think, Payal, there are 3 questions.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Should I address, or we both will address, or you decide until Manik said me and we both?
Yes, sir. Please, yes.
One thing, Manoj, I want to just mention here, as you talked about police personnel, it is really great that in Calcutta, the police, they are now maintaining one NGO called Pranam for the senior citizens. And in every household, they are taking note down who are the senior citizens, taking record of that. And in case of any emergency, the police people are coming and helping the senior citizens in Calcutta, of course.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for edifying us on the issue. It was indeed a privilege to listen to your exhaustive lecture on the topic. Now, our speakers are going to answer all the questions asked by the participants. I will read it out one by one. The question.
So, Parveen, should I
So our
start
first
or?
question. Yes, sir. I will just read it out, sir. Yeah. So the first question is asked by Debashish Kumar Datta. The question is: still the government is asking for SMS social distance mask sanitize. I want to ask how far logical it is to call it social distancing instead of physical distancing. Is it not creating a barrier?
Manita, you want to answer or should I? Okay.
Yeah. See, one thing. There are a lot of debates about the nomenclature, whether this is social distancing or physical distancing. And of course, if you take the meaning of the word, I think it is more comfortable when we talk about physical distancing rather social distancing, because the term social distancing denotes a different connotation, meaning. So I believe that it should be physical distancing, not the social distancing.
Yeah, I think
Manoj,
I agree with
supplement,
Professor Manik Chakravarti. Somehow, the moment we say social distancing, it looks like some kind of barrier. That what has been pointed out by the Devasis correctly, and more appropriate term would have been physical distancing. But what is still it has been identified during this pandemic by many. Social distancing is not appropriate term. It has to be more on the physical distancing. When government itself says कि 2 गज की दूरी मास्क है जरूरी, 2 गज की दूरी मास्क है जरूरी. So when you talk about the distance, so physical distance, 2 गज की दूरी means no, it's not social, it's a physical distance. So you want to keep two individuals separately. But even if I go in the metro station, I see कि something is the word is social, maintain social distancing. So somewhere some mistake has occurred internationally and it's continuing, and particularly it's become very relevant in Indian context where society is divided or in a lot of things. So the more appropriate term will be physical distancing.
Okay, so our next question is by Nabil Ehtisham. He has asked, please tell something about the Rohingya Muslim elderly people.
I think, as I said, the principle of non-discrimination. Whosoever in your territory, whosoever, national, non-national. So state has an obligation to implement human rights on the principle of non-discrimination. Under the constitution also, Constitution 15.2 also talks about the non-discrimination. So treatment to the elderly people or younger people of Rohingya is not justified. Legal status is different. Whether they are lawfully in a country, whether they have entered. But if elderly Rohingya people had some problem, they have also, state has an obligation. Supreme Court has also said many occasions that right to food, right to shelter, right to health care has available to the everyone. Whosoever enters in your territory, right to health care, right to food, right to shelter is there. Status, legal status, whether legal or illegal, that will take course of it will be decided later on. So if a Rohingya refugees have some problem, elderly person, state cannot deny. Neither state nor private enterprises can deny the treatment on the ground. You are Rohingya elderly Muslim will not do that. So if they do, that is the violation of the constitutional rights. That is the violation of the international human rights.
Actually, Manoj, there is one beautiful provision in the 1951 Refugee Convention, that is the principle of refoulement. So once they are in your country, then you cannot just force them out because they are human beings. You just force them to death and all. So the principle of refoulement also I think it is very important in this context.
Moving on to
Next
our third question. It is asked by Upasana Ghosh. So she has asked, also during the farmers' protest now, police are beating up the elder farmers like anything. How can they do so? Why no actions are taken against the police?
Actually, these are all political issues, no doubt. But when the police are beating, you see, they have to also abide by the rule, the human rights rule. They are not out of that. They are not excluded. They have no right to beat an elderly people, whether he is protesting or not, because to protest on a legal ground, everybody has the right, under the constitution. So of course, if as we have seen, so from all society people are condemning it, because it is condemnable. Police cannot apply third degree in to such a protesters when they are doing some protest on some very valid grounds. Of course, I believe that the police cannot do that.
Like what we are witnessing, and this has become a common phenomena global also. Even just Canadian Prime Minister, UN Secretary
True.
General, all are what they are emphasizing. People have a right to demonstrate peacefully. So they're like, no, they have been saying, and that is also a great human rights issue. So like people have right to demonstrate peacefully. If demonstration is not peacefully, then how to control and how to distinguish who is elderly or is serious. So some way, if violent protest, there is no justification for the violent protest. If a protest is peaceful, there is no ground to use force or use force against the demonstrator or people those who are demonstrating. If there is a possibility of some kind of violation takes place, there is a possibility to control, and what sir had said, that has to be it should be proportionate. Doctrine of proportionality has to be applied. It cannot be rampant or you start beating. So that becomes a little bit a serious issue, and hopefully things are changed. But people have a right to demonstrate, and state has also right to maintain law and order.
Correct.
If the public demonstration it becomes haywire and it creates a lot of burning of public property, there is and there is no way out, then state has some authority. But of course, while dealing with this kind of thing, state must adhere to the doctrine of proportionality. What kind of damage has been done, what kind of things has been done, and accordingly resort to the force can be justified. Otherwise, what happened in this case, what Upasana has rightly pointed out, that is not required. That was not required. Beating of the elderly farmers when they are more or less peaceful.
Actually, Manoj, I want to remind Upasana that there is a a landmark judgment given by the Supreme Court of India, D.K. Basu versus State of West Bengal, about the code of conduct of the police. So I believe that that yes, what you have told, that police cannot just do it randomly. They have to see the situation, and of course they have to maintain the law and order. That is of course the issue of the state government. So in that case, they have to also take care, very much care, by the police authorities.
Okay, sir, we will take this last question from S. Lisa. She's asked, as family and educational institutions play a vital role to the young people's behavior towards the elderly people, so isn't it necessary to teach them about morals and values when they were young?
That has been, Professor Manoj, he in his total lecture, he repeated the whole, this main point, that values, human values, of course this is our duty as a father or parents, to teach our son and daughter the human values, the social value. But unfortunately, due to now the chaos in the society, due to my huge crisis for job and other issues, social issues. Now everybody is forgetting the social issues now. When you are passing through the street and if somebody has met an accident and dying, nobody bothers, nobody cares, nobody has time to even just stand for a few minutes and take care of that injured man to the hospital. Nobody, everybody is just is very much conscious about his own you know business. So that is the main problem with the society. We are just telling that this is moral obligation, but one thing, this is not moral, this is also legal obligation, I believe, because if we take as a whole the whole Indian constitution, this is also legal obligation of everybody to take care of even the social values. But our constitution in many provisions talks of also social values. So this is, I think, high time now that we should give maximum importance to teach social values in our educational institutions, and also at our home, because as Professor Manoj told, that it is from the home the whole issues, the conflict between the older and the younger starts. And so I think this is high time to think it seriously, because we have forgotten our social values and moral values. Really, this is true.
If you see the new education policy 2020,
Okay.
new education policy 2020 also emphasized on the value education. And what I say, I have mentioned that of course the first value education from home, from the parents, and then subsequently in the formative stage when children is 1 to 14 or 15 years old, that is the formative years. They have to inculcate all these values. After 14, 15, they will on their own way, and they will decide what is right and wrong. So I believe what sir has also said, and I mentioned also in the beginning, that is very important, which has to be taken note by the family and also, I think.
I would now like to request the participants. Am I audible? Am I audible? Yeah. Okay, so now I would like to request all the participants, if you guys have any additional questions, you can drop it in the chat box and our resource person shall address to it. We will just wait for 2 minutes and then we will move on to the other session. Thank you. So there is another question from Leeton Mithro. He has asked how modern technology separates us from elder people.
I think Manoj can give.
Technology is huge challenge, both inside or outside. It's a huge and it also all Supreme Court judgment, Puttaswamy right to privacy also become very. If your mama sees even Parveen, if your mama takes your mobile phone and they start checking, you you feel agitated immediately. Is my how can you touch? So reaction is very much we all face in the family. Whenever we feel technology some way creating a barrier or a separate space for everyone. And even it's not like the young person, so you're 40 years old, will not consider ourselves, but 40 years old now, they are also, father is also busy, mother is also busy, children are all are busy in the mobile, looking into whatever, some good thing, bad thing, whatever they are looking. So technology has some way created a separate space within the home. The moment you enter, half of 90% time either you study, or even if you are studying and you say, okay, I'm studying on the mobile. And the COVID-19 also further it deteriorated everything. Now everything on the technology is there. So technology has created individual space, like what I see, individual space, and no one, whether son, daughter, father, mother, nobody wants that space has to be infringed or violated by, close relatives. So that space become very sacrosanct these days, very important space. So your mobile is not only mobile which you seek information, the only data which you keep in mobile, it's a personal. So you don't want to share with your parents and everything. The moment parents control is increasing, or even teachers control is increasing, or anybody try to control, there is some kind of conflict. I'll not say conflict any huge, but there are some kind of resentment. It is there. So technology, what ultimately technology has done, it has made a space in four walls. So you are living in a one room, but you all have a separate space, and which has become very precious and important and sacrosanct. And you want to protect always your data or your information, which you are sharing with the other person and which you are receiving from the other person. So of course technology has become, and it's an addiction, and some way it's creating huge problem in the family, and all are responsible. I not say ki only one person is responsible, young people are responsible, we all are responsible. So this is a huge challenge which society is currently facing, nationally or worldwide. It's not one place.
Right.
Over to you, Parveen.
So now, on behalf of the Department of Human Rights and Human Development and Department of Disability Studies, I would like to thank Professor Manik Chakraborty and Professor Manoj Kumar Sinha for being a part of today's session and sharing such useful information with all of us. It was not only uprising but equally engrossing. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, so now
So
it's time to move on to the technical session.
So we can come out, we can leave, no?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Manoj.
Thank you. All right.
Yes, sir. Okay, so now it's time to move on to the technical session. I would like to invite the coordinator of Department of Disability Studies, Rabindra Bharati University, Mr. Sanjay Kumar Yadav, to introduce and welcome the esteemed chairperson, Professor Vishnu Padananda, for today's technical session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Praveen. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I feel immense pleasure to introduce and welcome of today's chairperson of Technical Session 6, Professor Vishnu Padananda, sir, who is a professor of the Department of Education, Jadavpur University, and former head of the Department of Education, Jadavpur University, Kolkata. He started his career as the visiting professor, Department of Special Education, Institute of Education and Research, Dhaka University, in 1995 and continued till 1998. Later on, from 1998 to 2002, he was the district coordinator of Integrated Education for the Disabled at Murshidabad, West Bengal. And from 2002 to 2005, he was the coordinator, training and projects, Manovikas Kendra, Kolkata. His various research works comprise of psychology and education of children with special needs, street children, transgender and inclusion in education, rehabilitation psychology, stress, distress and depression, geriatric problems and behavior modification. In his research experience, He has guided 10 PhD and 40 MPhil scholars. He has published and presented more than 100 research papers in the national and international research journals and seminars. He has also written a few books, namely Challenged Children, Problems and Management, History of Special Education, Exceptional Children, School Without Walls in 21st Century, Mental Retardation, Biomedical Aspects, Mansik Pratibandhito, Down Syndrome, Vyatikram Dharmi Shishu, Shishu Without Walls, Vishesh Shikhar Itihas, Shikhar Abhivan, etc. He has also edited many books, namely Challenged Children, Problems and Management, Vishay Rabindranath, Ajana Manush Vivekananda, Tvetopodo Nivedita, Sarvotomukhi Rabindranath, and Chirantani. Other than that, he was the editor of Indian Journal of Special Education, Rabindra Bharati University, and he is also the editor of Renova, an interdisciplinary journal of research and innovation in education, rehabilitation, and counseling, Jadavpur University. He is also a member of the editorial board of International Research Journal, Person with Special Needs and Rehabilitation Management, Jadavpur University. I heartily welcome you, sir, on the behalf of the Department of the Disability Studies and Department of the Human Rights and Human Development, Rabindra Bharati University. Over to you, Prabhu.
We all are. Welcome, sir. The session is all yours. We have 5 paper presenters from different institutions, and we all are very excited to hear from them all. So our first paper presentation is from Mr. Jose John and Dr. Abshana Jamal, Assistant Professor and Social Work Student, Rajagiri College of Social Sciences, Kerala, India. The paper is titled as Safeguarding the Geriatric Rights, a case study on the Elderly Inclusion Program of Kudumbashree. Over to you, ma'am. Over to you, ma'am, and sir.
Perhaps some technical problem is there for the first presenter.
Sir?
Technical problem is there, perhaps.
Am I audible to you? Am I audible to you, sir?
Yes, you are audible. You are audible.
Sir, the session is all yours. I have. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, so I will just call out for the presenter once again. So the first presentation is from Mr. Jose John and Dr. Abshana Jamal, Assistant Professor and Social Work Student, Rajagiri College of Social Sciences, Kerala, India. The paper is titled as Safeguarding the Geriatric Rights, a case study on the Elderly Inclusion Program of Kudumbashree. So the paper will be presented by Jose John, I guess. So over to you, sir.
Okay. He is present. Jose John is present.
Yes, sir.
And,
yes, sir.
Dr. Jose John, you are requested to present your paper in a very lucid manner. And I think it will be a very interesting session as you are going to discuss about the geriatric rights in your state, particularly in Kerala. Sir. But this is not only the problem of the Kerala, rather it is the problem of entire India and Indian subcontinent. So please start your paper.
Please. Okay, sir, is the presentation visible?
Yeah.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Respected panel and my dear friends, I'm Jose John, doing my post graduation in social work from Rajagiri College of Social Science. Me, along with my professor Afshana Jamal, has prepared this paper. So the topic is safeguarding the geriatric right, a case study on the elderly inclusion program of Kudumbasri in Kerala. So, as a basic introduction, we know that due to demographic transition, people in the world, the aging is higher rates than previous years. This has put an increased burden in all countries to safeguard the geriatric rights. As we all know, that World Health Organization has decided to endorse this decade as decade of healthy aging. So, considering this issue, the rising elderly population in Kerala, the Kudumbasri of Kerala has initiated a program called Elderly Inclusion Program in the locality. So, about a brief of Kudumbasri. Kudumbasri is a poverty eradication and women empowerment program implemented by State Poverty Eradication Mission of Government of Kerala. The major objective of the elderly inclusion program of Kudumbasri is to mobilize the elderly and enhance their well-being through a participatory method. The program has a huge success in state of Kerala and has formed around 562 elderly neighborhood helping program. So the major focus of this paper is to learn how the elderly inclusion program of Kudumbasri safeguard the right of the elderly people. The methodology used here was the data were organized using primary data collection method through telephonic interviews. The participants include the members representing elderly neighborhood self-group named Suruma, located under Varakulam Panchayat in Kerala. Four participants were chosen for the interview. Snowball sampling was used as a technique. So from the basic analysis, I have mentioned some narratives here. So I understood what we get is the elderly inclusion program as an agent of socialization. From the narratives, understand that it's a narrative what Anandivalli Amma, which I have interviewed, he said that at times in the age, I find it very difficult to be in the home, but at the end of the week, no matter what comes, I try my level best to be in the neighboring groups, because in the group I have a lot of friends who are similar to my age. So basically what they do is that they used to form the elderly group members in the community used to form in a house of an elderly. They used to gather and they used to have discuss the major problem. They used to have debates, discussion, etc. So one aspect is that the agent of it acts as an agent of socialization. The second award we analyzed is that from the narrative of Rosie Amma, we could say that Amma means we used to say mother, call mother as Amma in Kerala. So she said that I am a woman with a lot of old age problem like difficulty in breathing and other physical problem. For me, elderly self group is a place to relieve my stress, to be happy with my friends or similar age. So one aspect is that when we become elderly, there may be a lot of problems, depressions faced. So as part of many of them may have emptiness syndrome. So while gathering, while getting along with similar people of similar age, they used to discuss, and a state of mental health, happy well-being is developed among the members. So elderly inclusion program as an agent of promoting financial stability. Here what they do that when they gather, they invest 10 rupees in every week as a thrift collection. So for what they do, each members will be investing rupees 10, and since Kudumbasri is taking care of that, they will be the amount they gathered will be put in the bank and they will get interest for that. And a lot of banks are willing to take take the initiative of Kudumbasri, and many of them are providing loan. So most of the elderly got a chance if they want to start an enterprise, or if they want to start a medicine, or buy a medicine, or if they want to change spectacles, they could take the money from the Kudumbasri and don't depend on the family members. So from this, what we understand is that there are geriatric right to social inclusion. So this elderly inclusion program is a mean to socialize. As I said, that they express their concerns in the group, they debate, discuss, and a healthy, active relationship is evolved. And a social inclusion factor is raised there. If anyone has problem, the group will find a solution, or will make them to be relieved from that problem. So it's one of the major aspect that this program has increased geriatric right of social inclusion. One another factor is about the health inclusion. Then basically the mental health, because we itself know that when we are in stress and if we talk to some friends, everything will be like minimized. What about the elderly people? They are facing lot of problems. So when they gather in groups, when they discuss, when they say about their problems, there may be solution for some. And I kind of, from the interview, like most of them were talking very happily about the program. So, and also age friendly, as World Health Organization put that depression and dementia, one of the top problem of elderly. This program helped them to face that, fight against that. There are medical camps organized by this program, so that most of them may benefit from these medical camps. Next is that financial inclusion. That's there, that even in the age of elderly, they will be having a financial stability. A financial inclusion or financial well-being will be provided through this program. And the major reason for them was the thrift collection they have, the 10 rupees they put, the loan they do, and also they have welfare activities even in the age of 60. Like because even in our community, after the age of 60, people will sit in the bed and say they are old. But here the people are more active and they get into the society, they get into the field, they do welfare services. So one of the major aspects that thrilled me. So understanding this, few suggestions, few limitations of the program were the physical health of the elderly has to be focused more, I suppose. So, and also these people are less aware of the schemes of government and welfare activities of India regarding aged people. So if the elderly inclusion program could promote these aspects, definitely they will safeguard the geriatric rights. So as in conclusion, we are discussing about the major aspect of human rights regarding elderly, because one thing that Kerala faces is that there are stereotypes regarding elderly. Like if they are elderly, means they should sit in the home. No, we used to say age is just a number. Similarly, the people through the elderly inclusion program could promote, even the elderly inclusion program, which I interviewed, was going to conduct a program, but due to pandemic, the program was changed. So they are actively enrolled citizens, and they even have lot of advices to say to the coming generations. So in short, elderly inclusion program safeguard the geriatric rights of elderly. This was a campaign that I did after having this paper, after influencing on this program. So that's all. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Josh John and Madam Afsana Jaman, for your very interesting paper. Very recently, I am guiding one scholar in PhD on the area of geriatric problems. And therefore I became truly interested. And most important points what you have discussed, this is truly a problem of the country, that is the depression, that is the dementia, the physical as well as the mental health. And therefore we need inclusion. Inclusion does not mean only the inclusion of the disabled, rather the inclusion of the geriatric persons, and they have some rights of social inclusion. We should think about it. And not only that, you have discussed about the financial problems the most of the geriatric people faced in the country, and they need one kind of inclusion, because they have also right to live like a normal people. And the government should develop some schemes and activities. And not only this development is sufficient, rather the government should think about that what type of activities are going on in the family, in the geriatric homes or senior citizens homes, as well as what role the social workers of different colleges and universities, the graduates of social workers, what type of role they are playing. That is also very much important, and you have discussed about it. And not only, finally, you conclude with the major rights of inclusion. Thanks, John. I personally, become enriched, and I believe that all the audience, they are enriched from your paper, from your qualitative paper, which is very much essential in nowadays. Thank you, John, and thanks to Professor Afsana Jaman.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, next paper, Parveen, madam, please.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. So our next presenter is Dr. Babita Patnaik, who is an occupational therapist at National Institute for Orthopedically Handicapped, Bonhogli, Kolkata, India. The title of our paper is Comparative Studies of the Vulnerability and Violation of Human Rights Regarding Seniors in India versus United States during COVID-19. Over to you, ma'am.
Namaskar and a good afternoon to all of you. Originally, I come from Ganjam, a rural district of Orissa, where COVID management was very efficiently done. I'm an occupational therapist and an administrator practicing in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. It's a rural area in US. My research topic is comparative study of seniors living in rural India versus seniors living in rural US during the COVID-19 situation. I thank Mr. Amiya Sahu, the additional district magistrate, and Dr. Bijayananda Sethi, deputy collector, both from Ganjam district, for sharing their protocols, treatment principles, and data that was needed for this comparative study. Second slide, please. Subrat Mishra is the co-author of this research that I did. And we both are registered and certified occupational therapists with 28 years of experience working with the geriatric population in US. Third slide, please. The abstract, the seniors with or without disabilities have been very vulnerable during this pandemic. Their basic rights, such as having access to food, medicine, and transportation to the hospital, has all been compromised and violated due to the lockdown. The case studies, there were 3 case studies that we did to compare the various settings, conditions, family dynamics, and psychosocial elements in both the rural setting of US and India. This research hopefully will provide some solutions using this comparative data. Fourth slide, please. Introduction. As you see in the chart, in Ganjam, the case mix comprised of 30 seniors of ages 65 and above. It was noted that the routine medical checkups were unavailable during the COVID situation, and there was restrictions for essential services like dialysis and diabetic management, diabetes mellitus management. Now, the hospital admits were only COVID-19 related, and the COVID tests were provided at home by the officials. And this is in Ganjam that I'm talking about. The social stigma was initially quite predominant, but then as the elderly came back home after the treatment, the social stigma started going away after a few months of the lockdown. Now, in Poplar Bluff, as you see, the case mix included veterans with psychiatric illnesses, along with the 65 years older and old senior citizens. So the telehealth visit in US was available for the routine healthcare checkups. Now, COVID-19 was done by the public health department in various counties, and the ER and the urgent care was readily available for emergencies. The essential services for chemotherapy, dialysis, motor vehicle accidents, those essential services were available through ER. Now, seniors in both the countries could not access public transportation during COVID-19, as you all know. Fifth slide, please. The methodology that was used in Ganjam for the data collection was phone interviews and door-to-door survey. They used the WHO guidelines, and they followed the triple T principle of tracing, tracking, testing, and treatment. Now, in Poplar Bluff, similarly, the social workers, they performed the comprehensive assessments at home, at the residential care facilities, and the assisted living through the home health agencies and in-home care services. So the continuity of care, as you guys have been discussing, post-hospitalization of the COVID patient was there. The physical therapist, the occupational therapist, nursing services all went into the house and they continued the treatment of these patients. Now, the agencies that were used for home health, they followed the CDC guideline, and the Department of Health and Senior Services in US had a major role in assigning the PPE and all the treatment protocols. That was constantly a dynamic process of changing from a week to the other. So they had to keep up, and actually I had to keep up too, since I've been an administrator for a home health agency. The Triple T concept was equally implemented in Missouri. Fourth slide, please. Thank you. So can we go to the introduction? There should be introduction slide. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So in Ganjam, the case mix comprised of 30 seniors of ages 65 and above. It was noted that the medical, I think we went through this. Okay, let's go back to the case study one. I'm sorry, I think I'm repeating myself. Case study one, okay, the data that was collected was, again, using the 30 patients from the rural areas of Ganjam and the rural areas of Poplar Bluff. Now, in Ganjam, accessing information for of the comorbidities, as in diabetes mellitus, CHF, or other various conditions, was very challenging. The data was in paper and not easily accessible. Now, the financial implications of COVID on seniors was there. However, the state government of Odisha provided monetary compensation. Now, dealing with deaths, which was unprecedented and was unexpected during COVID, that was taken in a very nice way through the government, where the rites were performed, the death rites were performed with dignity. Now, that kudos goes to the government of Orissa for doing that. The social stigma was initially there, and that was replaced later on. The senior housing accessibility was not available. Now, in Poplar Bluff, Missouri, the electronic media was used, and the insurance covered the COVID-19 related expenses. And the planning and preparation for in case of death of COVID was always there at the hospitalization time. So that made it easier for them to plan and execute the rites. Social stigma was not a factor at all in US. Case study two, case studies two focused on the factors that affected life satisfaction of seniors in rural Odisha versus rural Poplar Bluff during COVID-19. In Odisha, abuse and neglect by caregivers was not as openly evident or was not reported, as they lived with good community support and good family support. The counseling services were available by phone calls to address certain mental health issues like depression and anxiety. Food and medicine was delivered to the seniors home by the government agencies. Now, in Poplar Bluff, on the other hand, abuse and neglect of the patient was noted, because most of the elderly population in US, they live in a nuclear family, and hence there is a chance of the caregivers who provide care to these patients, they have a chance of going through the abuse and neglect. So that was noted. Telehealth visits were used for counseling, and meals on wheels were provided. 8th slide, please. Should say case study 3. Yeah. the study was, in this case study, the study was done to identify the comorbidities and utilization of health services in both US and India. In Odisha, management of diabetes mellitus, chemotherapy, and other routine exams were challenging during this COVID-19 times for our seniors. The COVID-19 management included home delivery of meds and food, and this was planned pretty well in the state of Odisha during the lockdown. The seniors who lived without the caregivers, however, faced a lot of problems due to the non-availability of the domestic help. In Poplar Bluff, on the other hand, the home health agencies and the in-home care agencies, they came into the houses of these elderly and they provided the necessary care, like blood draws for for making sure the blood thinners were in place, and chemo pump they could use at home for taking care of the patients, the cancer patients who were receiving chemotherapy. And food meds were were planned and were delivered to the house. So in conclusion, can I have the next slide, please? Okay. As I said, our seniors have the same rights as others, and as all the esteemed speakers before me have said, they should be equally protected during the pandemic. Their rights should be protected. Ganjam, Odisha has successfully, even being in a rural model, has succeeded in taking care of the seniors. And I would suggest that all the other states follow the same model, or at least try to implement some of the things they have done. The social workers should be a very important part in doing the assessments of our seniors and focusing on mental issues. Right now, I think as we get over the lockdown and get into the real lives, I think there will be a lot of mental issues due to the social isolation, due to economic effect of pandemic, and that's what we need to focus on. And the social workers will play an important part in identifying, analyzing, and providing the treatment for those patients. I believe that we should always be a part of the solution rather than being worried about the problem. And this is a very small effort on my part to come in and just try to share the information and make sure that we can use the resources that is available globally. And this pandemic has united us in a bad way, and sometimes I think the lessons learned in the hardship is what takes us moving in a good direction. I would end my presentation here. And I think I have a slide for acknowledgements and another slide for references, which I would suggest that there is an article in Economic Times in India, which I highlighted. I would suggest all the viewers to please read that, because that relates to the current situation of what's going on with our seniors in India. Namaskar. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks. Thanks to Babita Patnaik as well as Subrata Misra from Ganjam, Odisha. They done one very interesting research paper on senior citizens, particularly on their abusement. Yes, this is the major problem. What I have already said, that the people in our country, the senior citizens in our country, they are now in a situation of abusement. And she concluded with two very interesting terms, what touched to me, not only to me, I think to all the listeners, those who are present now, that one thing is that same rights like all others. All the senior citizens should have same rights like those who are non-senior citizens. They may be affected from COVID-19 situation. They may not be. They may have different types of comorbidity, or they may not have. But we should think about it And the another one point is the pandemic situation united us, united not only the people of the country, rather the people of the world. That is that our Vedic chanting, the Srinantu Vishe Amrita Shaputra, all the peoples in the world, they are the son and daughters of the same energy, same power, Srinantu Vishe. And this line is uttered by Babita Patnaik, and they have done their work about the vulnerable situation of the disabled senior citizens in our country. From one aspect, senior citizens are the disabled. From one aspect, if we discuss it from the sociological viewpoint, then the senior citizens, the street children, platform children, children from the brothels, or even the prostitutes, they all are the socially disabled. So some people are socio-economically disabled, and most of the senior citizens in our country, they are economically, socially, and in some aspect, they are culturally also disabled, as well as in most of the families, they are taken as the disabled. And there is a social stigma, what she uttered, that is social stigma is predominant when one individual become senior citizen, as well as when he or she is infected from COVID-19 situation. But there is hope, a ray of hope, what he said, that it become loose day after day, that this social stigma. But perhaps this is not the problem of United States, because that is so developed country, and the different types of psychiatric problems like depression and all other different types of psychiatric problem, the biological problem like diabetes mellitus, and some people who are infected in this situation, they are also infected in cancer, affected from cancer and infected by COVID-19 situation. Such type of very typical comorbidity is present in both areas. But the hope is that the Ganjam district authority, they done some very interesting work for the people, for the senior citizens who are infected from the COVID-19 situation. And what she said, she concluded that all the states of the country must follow this this model. Yes, I also accept this concept that all the states of the country and even all the states of the India must, and Indian subcontinent must continue such type of model to protect our senior citizens. They are the most valuable wealth for any country, for any society, as well as for any family. So thanks, Babita and Subrata Mishra. I think both are from Odisha. Your surname, what said, both are from, perhaps both are from Odisha, and both are now working in United States. But at the same time, you are thinking about our country also, your own country, your motherland also. Thanks, ma'am. Thanks for coming here and presenting such type of very interesting paper for all the audience of our country. Thanks.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
I would now like to invite our third presenter, Ms. Sabina Siddiqui, Executive Director of Center of Social and Environmental Research Foundation, Bangladesh. Her paper is titled as Freedom and Rights of Senior Citizens, Role of the Society. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, you are audible, ma'am.
Okay. Good afternoon. I would like to thank Rabindra Bharati University, the organizer, all participants, audience, and who are with me right now. I feel honored to share some facts and analysis about senior citizens in Bangladesh. Next slide. The United Nations declared those people as senior citizens who are at and above 65 years. And the Bangladesh National Policy on Older Persons defines senior citizens at and above the age of 60. The number of senior peoples all over the world by 2050, it will be 16%. And in Bangladesh, it will be 22% of total population. So it is seen that the number of senior citizens is increasing dramatically in the world and also significantly increasing in Bangladesh. Because of their vulnerability and because they are dependent on on the active force. As a result, active force in the society will have to take the responsibility more and more senior people in future. The aim of the study is to find and analyze the pain of senior people and the responsibility regarding this matter in the of the society. Next slide. Using research methods like literature review, secondary data analysis, case study, all divisions in Bangladesh, and also focus group discussion, and qualitative and quantitative research methods also was used to find the fact of the research, and the consultation with senior citizens and all the members and other members in the society in the name of the banner Gurujon Ashur covers all division in Bangladesh. Next slide, please. After analyzing those data, a very interesting fact was found that life expectancy has increased dramatically in Bangladesh. Like Bangladesh got independence in 1971. After that, the record says in 1974, the life expectancy was 47 years. But in 2018, it has increased in 72 years. The cause of increase in life expectancy is reducing fertility rate, reducing child mortality rate, improving medical health care, and nutrition. This graph shows that at birth, a child has an average 72 years life expectancy, but a person when crossing 60 years in his or her life, the life expectancy is more 19 to 20 years. Next slide. So the question is, what will be his or her quality of life during the last few years after 60? Research found that they are getting marginalized, more vulnerable, and losing their freedom and rights, some financial problems they have, and insufficient legal policies and medical service. And this is important to say that females are more vulnerable than men because of social stigma and bias. In this current situation, in COVID-19 situation, it has seen that the death percentage of death of senior citizen is higher than the young person. Next slide, please. To minimize the condition, this poor condition of senior citizens, Bangladesh Constitution, National Policy on Older Person, and the Parents Care Act 2013, all are trying to help senior citizens, providing security, providing awareness, and pushing the child to take care of their parents. They can file cases against the children if the children cannot take care of them. Next slide, please. In this matter, society has a myriad responsibility to minimize this condition. And though society is changing dramatically from joint family to nuclear family, and old homes are increasing day by day, and senior citizens are becoming isolated, and they are facing a lot of problems in their life. And religion has a very vital role to make them in a good quality of life, because all religion believes that family member should take care of their senior person. Next slide, please. Some recommendation is the laws and the policy are not enough, so it should be improved, and family members should not send the senior person in the old home. They should take care of them, and fruitful counseling is needed for the family members. Healthcare facilities should be made available, and family and social should follow religious advice. From the religion aspect, and the very important is the mindset of the family members, because some family members thinks that senior citizens, they have nothing to give to the family and society, and so on. But this is not true. Their life, their knowledge, their sacrifice can show a light to the next generation, guiding them to a proper way of life. Next slide. Hope all senior citizens will be in good condition in the family and in the society. Thank you all.
Thank you, Madam Sabina Siddiqui. You are from Dhaka, Bangladesh, our very neighboring country. Though once we was the same country, India, Bharatvarsho, খুব সুন্দর একটা ডেফিনেশন রয়েছে in Monu Sanghita regarding the Bharatvarsha. Uttarang yat samudrasya himadreschaiva daksminam varshang tad bharatang namo bharati yatra santati. Anyhow, after 1947, your country separated from the mainstream India, and after 1972, you got your 71. You got your 1971. You got your independence. Yeah, okay, that's very good. And your paper, the first thing is that your paper is very much interesting. I will discuss from four different points, what you concluded here, very interesting four different points, that laws and policies are not enough in Bangladesh regarding the senior citizens, regarding the development, regarding the nurturing of the senior citizens in the country. Laws and policies are not sufficient, and further laws and policies or more strict laws and policies must be developed. But only the laws and policies are not sufficient to look after the senior citizens of the country, not as a burden, rather the ray of hope for the country, for which we need further awareness and sensitization of all the people of the country from the very birth to the, that is from the cradle to the grave of the people. So till we can't prepare, we can't teach, we can't sensitize not only the aware, but to sensitize all the peoples of the country, you will not be able to protect these people as the most important wealth of the country. The number two, you very clearly defined that counseling is needed. Yes, madam, I also believe, and I am also one of the expert in psychological counseling, and I started first time in Ravindra Bharati University postgraduate diploma in guidance and psychological counseling, then in Jadavpur University, as well as in under Calcutta University in Belur Math, that is the Shikhak Shikshan College, Ramakrishna Mission Shikhak Shikshan College. But the thing is that the general counselors are not sufficient to counsel senior citizen. So geriatric counseling, such type of courses, or at least specialization, geriatric counseling is needed. Like the geriatric medicine nowadays, some doctors, they specialized in geriatric medicine. The same thing is that geriatric counseling is needed, and this is very much important that you already denoted here, that counseling services is needed and must be available for all the people. But the problem is that sufficient number of psychological counselors, professional psychological counselors are not available in our country, that is in India. And I think, I also believe that that same thing is going on for your country. And I was there for 3 years, in 1995 to 1998. And after that, I gone a few times to Dhaka University, to Bangladesh British Council also for delivering speech, as well as in Jashore. Okay. And the very interesting another thing is that the religious advice is needed. In any religion, we provide due respect to all the elderly people. So that must be important. And the fourth and last one is that mind setup of family, not only the family, but the society as well as the country. Mind setup that the disabled are not the burden. They are not the burden. Tara amader কাঁধের উপরে কোনো বোঝা নয়. They are not the burden of our shoulder. And you accept the focus group discussion, very interesting feature, that is the qualitative study, and you try to quantify some points. And yes, these people, they are now vulnerable. And interesting is that life expectancy increased in Bangladesh, 72 years or more. But you have discussed about the quality of life is enhanced, both from medical aspect, from legal aspect, from social aspect, and particularly the women are more vulnerable. Yes, the women in our country, particularly the poor people from the poor families, the women are more vulnerable. And the same thing is there in your country. And we should protect them. We should fight against this vulnerability of the women's. And you need security. You have asked for need of security, need of awareness, and obviously childhood protection. This is not only for Bangladesh, this is not only for India, this is not only for the countries of Indian subcontinent, rather for all the countries in the world. If we want to protect the world, we must protect two particular groups, that is the children and the women, as well as the second one is the senior citizens. Until and unless we will be able to protect the children and their childhood, particularly their childhood, we must prevent the marriage before 18 years age, or nowadays government of India is thinking about the minimum age of marriage for the women must be at least 21 years. That is, before 21 years, all the girls, all the women, they must go to the school, college and universities. They must go to the playground. They must think about their career, and they should not enter in the so-called socially accepted prostitutional life. As you know, from the sociological point of view, before 18 years of age, the marriage is nothing but a kind of social prostitution. The girls, and even in Bangladesh as well as in some parts of India also, even 9 years age, 10 years, 12 years age is the age of marriage till date in our country and as well as in your country also, and which creates another vulnerability of the women's health problem. So you have discussed about all these things. You have discussed about the family structure has changed from joint family to nuclear family, but I think not. It stopped in nuclear family, rather it gone up to the broken family. What I found in your country during my stay in Dhaka University, as well as in different districts I gone for different types of speech, and so many women having the disabled child, having the disabled family members, they came to me and they discussed with me. I found that due to the birth of the disabled child in the family, there is divorce between the husband and wife only due to the birth of the disabled child. The women or my wife is not sufficient to provide me a healthy boy for the future of my family. So broken families are increasing. The same is increasing in India as well as in any part of the world, particularly in the developed countries. So very interesting paper you have discussed in the light of your country, the data from your country, and I believe that what I find that the same data will be available in our country also, in our state also. Thank you, ma'am. Thanks
Thank
to
you.
Sabina Siddiqui for her coming in our international webinar in Ravindra Bharati University, though very small university, but their heart is not small, their heart is burdened. And once upon a time, I was faculty member in Ravindra Bharati University for 8 years, and in the Department of Education, as well as before that, I was the faculty member in IER, Institute of Education and Research in Dhaka University in the Department of Special Education. So both the university, that is the Dhaka University and Ravindra Bharati University, now come in the conjoint point. Thanks, ma'am. Thanks again to you as well as to your country also.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So let's move on to our next presenter. Today's fourth presenter is Ms. Banita Martha Gomes, who is a student at the Department of Disability Studies, Rabindra Bharati University. The title of her paper is The Predicament of Golden Agers During COVID-19 Situation.
Thank you,
Over to
Parveen.
you, ma'am.
A very good afternoon to everyone present here. Hope you all are fine, safe, and at good health. We all do agree that COVID-19 has brought significant changes in all aspects of our lives. Today, I'll be sharing with you some of the different challenges faced by our golden agers in this pandemic situation. Next slide. Before we go into the details, let's start with the definition of aging by World Health Organization, which state, aging is the process of developing and maintaining the functional ability that enables well-being in older age. It is a process which occurs naturally in human life cycle. The perception towards older people varies from one society to another, and the process is inevitable. Their rights have been encroached each day and are subjected as the vulnerable class of our society. Today, most older people are going through a very bad phase in their life. COVID-19 threat has affected elderly's needs to a large extent, having a disproportionate negative impact in their health and human rights. Next. World Health Organization defines elder abuse as a single or repeated act or lack of appropriate action occurring within any relationship where there is an expectation of trust which causes harm or distress to an older person. Due to age restriction, along with sensory and cognitive deficits, our older adults may face several intensity of threat, physical, sexual, and psychological abuse, including silent treatment that is not talking to them, humiliation, intimidation, and controlling behavior of our caregivers. Next. These behaviors often have a long-lasting effect on the people and significantly affect the mental health and well-being, leading to depression, stress, anxiety, sleeping disorder, self-neglect, somatization, fear, etc. Basic problems faced by our older adults during pandemic times include not having access to services and treatment, increased emotional distancing from their loved ones, not being updated with the news, making them easy targets of misinformation, and having difficulties in getting access to necessary goods and domestic help. Added to that is the social stigma of ageism, which enhanced marginalization and segregation, abuse, increased institutionalization. Now, this is particularly because they have been suffering from chronic illness and disability that limits their daily activity. Researchers have found that the main perpetrators are the caregivers, adult children, and partners. And all of these have worsened during lockdown because they have been forced to stay at home. Survey conducted by different NGOs across India states that 50% of the calls they got on daily basis during lockdown were from the elderlies who just needed someone to talk. And this has somehow increased the demand for social services, but many organizations could not provide the services due to decreased funding and staff. Next slide, please. Some of the major fears that triggered the elders during lockdown were fear of getting infected by coronavirus, fear of starvation, loss of income, fear of traveling, fear of community spread, and the main feared stigma they had to face if they got infected or if their family got infected. Next slide, please. Here are some of the theories from different disciplines such as psychology, sociology, and biology that explains the possible causes of elder abuse. Number one, caregiver stress. Now, this is basically due to an overburdened caregiver who could not cope up with the demands of caring and creates a situation of abuse. Dependency. Dependency comes when getting removed from their workforce or being dependent on their children. Negative attitude, environmental stress, learned abusive behavior, that is learning the behavior by watching others doing. Caregiver pathology, spousal domestic abuse, cultural values and expectation. All these can hamper the autonomy and self-dignity of a person that are very important in resilience of any age group. It is important to rethink how services are provided to them in order to stop all these from happening. We are quite conscious that in India, most of the older adults are still working, and COVID-19 has not only affected the wealthy seniors, but also the low-income groups who are facing a risk of financial abuse. Next. Data shows that only 4% of the cases of elder abuse are actually reported during lockdown. Helpage India asserts that 71% of the elder respondents were the only wage earners of the family, and most of them were the unskilled casual workers from an unorganized sector. And the most predominant factor that the younger adults of the family release their frustration mostly on the older adults. It was also noted that the older adults were subjected to neglect. For instance, if masks were brought and were handed over to all at home, they didn't get a chance to look at them just because they hardly go out. So, neglect is a form of abuse too. They were even subjected to social mistreatment, which is also a form of abuse, leading to violation or denial of their personal rights. Domestic abuse were also quite evident as families have been forced to spend time together due to quarantine measure. Now, it has been found that 85.9% of the elders were not aware of their human rights, while some claim that does rights entitled to them. Thus, elderly risks are being neglected and unsupported when they require help the most. Government should intervene special and coordinated action plan supported by the family as well as community. Counseling were also inclined to them to release their distress. Next slide, please. Now, these are some of the measures that can be undertaken to ensure psychological and social well-being, which includes ensuring adequate precautionary measures suggested by World Health Organization, staying socially connected with their loved ones, along with social integration. Now, this can be done by including them in the decision making. Adequate emotional support is necessary for those living alone. Telefacilities for health care support, providing them necessary information in a relevant manner. Next slide. Here are some of the measures taken by community for awareness creation, which includes community voluntary support can be helpful, helpline services needs to be created, helping our older adults to learn new technology, staying active in the community from home, reaching out the family and friends, and ensuring adequate nursing care. All these can somehow be helpful for our older adults to express their emotion, as in today's generation we may have several other platforms where we can express our emotions or detract our emotions. But what about them? Can they express the way we do? Thus, it can be concluded that elder abuse is a multifactorial complex problem that affects elderly people with different backgrounds in the hands of wide variety of potential perpetrators, including caregiver, adult children, and partners. We need to be more sensitive and little conscious of what exactly we are doing. Next slide, please. So let's ask ourselves that is it only the responsibility of different society, NGOs, committees, and government, and not us being the member of the family to take care of those who once took care of us? Let's rethink a bit about our duties and responsibility, because a little care can make a big difference. Social distancing does not mean social isolation. We need to find smarter ways to stay connected. Next slide. With this, I end my presentation. Hope this apprises one's insight. Thank you.
A lots of thanks, Bonita Gomes from
Thank you, sir.
the Department of Disability Study, Ravindra Bharati University. Perhaps you know that this program of B.Ed Special Education VI started by me first time in West Bengal in any university. But at that time, that was the name of that name of your department was Center for Counseling and Disability Study, and another one evening program was started at that period, that the postgraduate diploma in guidance and psychological counseling. And your paper is more often the aspect from psychological counseling rather from disability study. Very interesting. You have you read out a theoretical paper, yes, but it's good. Again, it's good. You talk about the rights of elderly people today. All the prior three paper presenter, they also talked about the rights of the elderly people, particularly in this golden age of COVID-19, in this pandemic situation. And according to you, the elder abusement is of three different types: the physical abusement, the psychological abusement, even the sexual abusement. Though hearing this term, the sexually the older people are abused, but it is one-sided because sexual abusement is very rare, particularly for the women, and for the male, it is almost impossible. So you must say about it. And among the psychological problem, the emotional distress, depression, etc., these are the very much predominant problems. Physical health problem, yes, particularly in this situation, physical health problem is major. And there is the question of chronic illness, particularly those who are affected from chronic illness. They have a lots of different types of problems. And another one interesting thing is that abusement. Yes, yes, uh, that is invisible abusement, better to say. In most families, in most societies nowadays, abusement of the senior citizens are invisible, but it is continuously going on in the family. And very, very interesting one point uh, you are told about the need of support to talk. Yes, all the elderly people, they are always interested to talk with others, to share their experiences with others. That is very much important. But the problem is that the present generation, even your generation, girls and boys, they are less interested to talk with these old people. They are old, but they never think that old is gold in
Correct,
always
sir.
and everywhere. So they need support to talk, but nobody is interested to hear their voice, neither in the family, nor in the society, nor people from the neighboring. And particularly in this COVID-19 situation, they are unable to go outside. There is problem of traveling. You have already mentioned about the traveling problem. They have problem of traveling, particularly in the park or on the road, and therefore they are unable to take any kind of support services. They have fear of infection. Yes, this is again right. And fear of getting any kind of medical support, because nowadays most of the hospitals are COVID hospital, and therefore the general medical support are not available. And in a large number of hospital, COVID hospital seats are not available. And possible causes of abusement, you have discussed about the caregiver stress. The thing is that the caregivers in the field of disability, physical and intellectual disability, are available. That type of training is permitted by Rehabilitation Council of India, New Delhi, and in West Bengal, particularly in Calcutta, at least 2 or 3 organizations are there who are regularly providing caregivers training. But caregivers training, just to train up, just to support, just to provide care services to the old peoples, to the senior citizens, such type of uh, thinking is not there. And the people from the families, they never think about that. The external caregivers must be there to provide support services. Domestic abusement is always there in previous years also, and nowadays the cultural problems are there. Low income group peoples, they are more affected from abusement. Yes, this is right. And sometimes the higher income group people, they are more affected because they have to provide all their resources before their death to their beloved son or beloved daughter. And in some cases, the sons and daughters are not ready to wait to get their property, their wealth, etc., etc. This is another one thing which you have clearly defined here and discussed here. Counseling is needed to release distress, and you have talked about the tele-counseling. Perhaps you don't know, during the first lockdown period, I have first discussed in the Facebook and provide a good advertisement for because I'm interested to provide tele-counseling to all the people, those who are interested to get without getting a single money. So at that time, until that, I am providing telecounseling in our country from all the different parts of the people from all the different parts of the state. They are coming to me through telephone. So telecounseling is there, but I don't know whether the other counselors, they are providing such type of telecounseling without taking any kind of money, or in some cases also taking some money. So that is very much important. But in all the counseling program and all the caregiving program, we should provide them the knowledge, the experience, the skill about how to support the people, those who are in other side of my telephone. That is very much interesting what you have discussed here, and we should include these senior citizens in the decision making of not only the family matter but social matter, as well as the country matter also, because all the renowned political leaders, they are the old, and old is gold. And the last one, very important thing you have discussed about the community voluntary support from the, at least I know 2 or 3 organizations, those who are providing the voluntary support services to the elderly people, those who are interested. So thanks, Banita Gomez. A large number of thanks to you, because you are from my own department, which was started by me, and the nomenclature of this department, that is the disability study. When I first nomenclate this type of terminology, our then VC, Professor Karuna Sindhu Das, raised a question: if such type of organization or such type of department is there in any part of India? And I clearly answered that no, such type of department are not there, or center are not there, or this type of concept was not there in India. But I go through the different papers and books from the USA and UK, and from there I coined this term, and finally, Ravindra Bharati University maintains this terminology. That is the Department of Disability Studies. So thanks to you, thanks to your present coordinator, Sanjay. First, I was the first coordinator of Ravindra Bharati University in your program, and to Sanjay also, as well as to all the faculty members and the present Vice Chancellor. Thanks to you, Bonita.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Panita. So let's move on to our last presenter for the day, which is Upasana Ghosh, post-graduation student at the Department of Human Rights and Human Development, Rabindra Bharati University. The paper is titled as Forsaking Elderly Rights, a Cynical Wing of Our Society.
Thank
Over
you,
to you,
Parveen.
Upasana.
Good afternoon, sir, and good afternoon to all the panelists. I hope everyone is safe and fine. I'm a student of the Department of Human Rights and Human Development of Rabindra Bharati University of Kolkata, as Parveen said, and my paper's title is Forsaking Elderly Rights, a Cynical Wing of Our Society. Next slide, please. Okay, so here comes the abstract of the paper. That is, throughout the world, large number of older persons often face challenges such as discrimination, poverty, and abuse that severely restrict their human rights and their contribution to the society. Apart from that, being mistreated, verbally abused, and denied proper food, proper medication, financial exploitation of elders, neglect by the younger members of the family, maximum older people are indeed in a very helpless situation. With eroding social values in the developing states, cases of elder abuse and mistreatment in every neighborhood has become a daily routine. Apart from these, mental abuse is also there. Yelling or threats, humiliation and ridicule, habitual blaming or scapegoat, ignoring the elderly person, isolating an elder from friends or activities, terrorizing or menacing the elderly people has become a serious problem nowadays, and the COVID-19 has also added into this crisis. Next slide, please. Yes. Before getting into the objectives, I would like to say that with fast changing socio-economic scenario, industrialization, rapid urbanization, and higher aspiration among the youths and the increasing participation of women in the workforce, roots of traditional family, like such as the joint families, has been eroding very fast. Especially if we look into the urban areas of the country, traditional joint family system has become a thing of the past. In such a changing situation, especially the majority of older people who have passed most of their life with their joint or extended families are on the verge of isolation or marginalization in this old age. At this age, when they need family support the most, they are often denied of it, and they often cannot get into live on their own houses. The basic needs and the right of many of them are not addressed properly. Social marginalization, loneliness, isolation, and even negligence of old age people lead to the violation of the human rights of the older persons. Now, the objective of my study is to study the human rights of the older people in India, to assess the perception about the human rights of the older people in India, how to identify the kinds of abuse that they face, how their rights are neglected in a regular basis, why they're often unable to speak about their situation, how COVID-19 has worsened the situation, and to suggest or recommend some specific points to policymakers, planners, and the decision makers so that human rights of the older people could be strengthened in future. Next slide, please. Yes. Now coming to the crisis that the old people face. The first very crisis is economic problems. Economic problems include problems such as loss of employment, income deficiency, and economic insecurity. Next comes physical and psychological problems, along with physiological problems. Physical and physiological problems include health and medical problems, nutritional deficiency, and the problem of housing. Along with that, if we get into physio-social problem, we will see social maladjustment as well as the problem of elder abuse. And here comes the most important point, which has added up into all the crises, the COVID-19 impact. Social isolation, social distancing, social disconnectedness, and loneliness were found to be mediated with depression and anxiety, which has again evolved among the older people with the outbreak of this pandemic. Social isolation and social disconnectedness is a documented bidirectional and complex relationship between mental health issue and social disconnectedness. Itself, it possesses a serious public health concern among older adults, especially due to the psychosocial reasons and physiological health problems such as mental health problem, cardiovascular problem. These problems add up and create and it enhances all risk and all health problems of the elders. Next slide, please. Yeah. Now coming to the study methodology, participants basically are the senior citizens were divided into two groups, male and female. Data collected from 25 families. Maximum interviews were conducted via telephonic medium. Families were selected as per number of senior citizens living in together in a house, any widow or widower senior citizen, and the senior citizen who are living alone there. Maximum interviews were conducted via telephonic medium as the study mainly took place during the pandemic time, that is during September-October month. Measures, different types of informations were collected from every senior citizen based on their situation. Questions were asked on the treatment they received from their family, if there is any kind of disputes that are bothering them, any kind of property issues, if their opinions are considered or not in the decision making of the family, if they can express their thoughts, expressions within the family, whether they are having their privacy and dignity within the house or outside as well. Next slide, please. Yes. Now coming to the result. Maximum elderly persons responded that were found they were found they were living in their own houses, while few persons were found not living in their own houses. For instance, two of the respondents has visited the house of their in-laws, but they got stuck there due to this pandemic and lockdown. When data was analyzed gender-wise, it was found that more number of elderly men in comparison to elderly women were living in their own houses, while maximum number of older women preferred to stay with their daughter in her in-laws, rather than staying in her own houses with her son and daughter-in-law. Greater number of elderly respondents, mainly women, claimed that they have to face harassment or mistreatment due to housing in old age. Elderly women also stated that they face harassment and mistreatment due to their house and land property with the hands of their daughter and in-laws. In case of any widow and widower, they get constant threat of sending into the old age homes every other day. They are not even allowed to play with their grandchildren. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. Now coming to the observations. Since older persons are comparatively less visible in public places due to various reasons and live within four walls of their houses, most of the time their voices often remain unheard. Majority of older persons face harassment within their houses in the hands of their own family members. Now, here, what I particularly noticed while carrying out this study, and also stated today by Manoj sir, that they do not want to raise any complaint or file any complaint against their family because they don't want to take their private matters into public places or let the other families discuss about the disputes going on in a family. Elderly women are prone to elder abuse due to financial status and comparatively lesser social interaction in old age. And this COVID-19 outbreak has also been a catalyst and made the abuse even more dangerous. The elders cannot even go out for walks, interact with neighbors. No one could visit them as the elders are more prone to coronavirus. For many seniors, the only social life they had is with a book club and walk in a park. But now it all got cancelled, said a respondent who is a retired professor. Their lives got trapped within the four walls. Next slide, please. Existing laws. Now, coming to the existing laws, we have the United Nations Principles on the Rights of the Elderly Persons, where we can find that older persons should also have the opportunity to work and determine when to leave the workforce. Older persons should remain integrated in society and participate actively in the formulation of policies which affect their well-being. The next is that older persons should have the access to healthcare and to help them maintain the optimum level of physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Then we get into the basic human rights of older people. This, I believe, that is equal to all the people, irrespective of their age, caste, creed, sex, anything. That their right to life shall be protected by the law, right not to be subjected to any kind of inhuman treatment, and no one shall be subjected to torture or degrading treatment or punishment. Right to liberty, that everyone has the right to liberty and personal security, and right to a fair hearing in the determination of his civil rights and obligations. Then comes civil rights and obligations, that is the right to be respected at home, within family, and in private life, the right to freedom of thought and conscience, the right not to be discriminated against age, and the right to property, where everyone is entitled to enjoy the peaceful possessions. And we have the Constitution of India, Article 41, which guarantees right to work, to education, and to public assistance in certain cases, irrespective of old age, sickness, disablement, and in other cases of undeserved want. We have personal laws, and that is the under moral duty to maintain parents is recognized by all people. However, so far as law is concerned, the position and extent of such liability varies from community to community. Then we have the Act of Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizen Act of 2007, where it is a legal obligation for children and heirs to provide maintenance to senior citizens and parents by monthly allowance. Next slide, please. There are some recommendations, like level of awareness about human rights of other older people in Indian society, particularly among older persons, is very low. They are not even aware of the rights that they possess. Being a developing country, despite fast increasing elderly population, there is no special focus on rights of elderly. Therefore, protection of human rights of older people is still not a major issue for most Indians. Awareness regarding facilities or privileges for protection or rights of the elderly people and welfare measures of government for elderly is very low. So this study underlines the relevance of creating awareness among the older people about their rights, and government need to take action in this respect. Awareness of basic human rights and various welfare activities brought out by the government will help elderly people to live happily and utilize the facilities provided by the government to the maximum. Next slide, please. So here I conclude my presentation by vote of thanks to all the listeners, to Sir, and also to the panelists. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Upasana from Ravindra Bharati University, from the Department of Women's Studies. A very interesting department.
Sir, sorry to interrupt. Actually, I'm from the Department of Human Rights and Human Development.
Oh, Human Rights and Human Development, sorry. And very interesting topic, that is the forsaking elderly rights, a new concept she has established here. What she said about discrimination towards the elderly people, poverty, it increased discrimination, as well as the poverty again increased abusement in some cases, but not always. Hello.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yeah, am I audible? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then okay. So there is mental treatment, and the abusement are major of three major types. What Upasana has told, one is the verbal abusement. This is regularly going on. Everybody amongst us, we know it. Abusement in respect of food, particularly from the poor families, and other different types of abusements are going on. And joint family is now eroding, not only in urban areas as well as in rural areas of West Bengal and of country India. So joint family structure is now broken down not only into nuclear family, but rather into broken families, particularly in the urban areas, particularly in the cities. Such type of broken families are there. Family support, yes, it is denied by most amongst us. loneliness of the elderly people. They are isolated from the family, from the society, from their workplace, from their neighbors, even unable to speak about their problems, particularly in this COVID situation, because in other periods, they can at least speak, even not to their family members, but to others of the same age group. But in this COVID situation, this is true. The problematic situation, she described about three major aspects. One is the economic problem, the another one is the physical and physiological problem, and the third one is the psychological problem like maladjustment, depression, anxiety, and of different types. And public health concerns, this is not very good for the rehabilitation of the geriatric peoples. What I can say here that in India, there is one MD program, doctorate in medicine program in rehabilitation medicine. Perhaps in Calcutta, there is only 1 or 2 seats are there in rehabilitation medicine. But there is no such type of program that is the MD program in geriatric medicine. But nowadays, postgraduate diploma programs have started in geriatric medicine. But at least Rabindra Bharati University should think about, like the disability study, like the human rights department, like the women's study department, they can think seriously about to start a program of geriatric science and geriatric counseling, not general counseling. Geriatric counseling is different from the general counseling. And geriatric science, this is also a very good area of discussion, of research, of study, of expertization, of specialization for the peoples in future. She told that, Upasana told that widow, particularly of the old ages, they are more in the vulnerable situation. What she found, and the family harassed more to the widow people in their old age, and they are bound to remain silent. There is no other alternative, and women are prone to family abusement. It is regular. It is everywhere in our country. They are more prone to family abusement, particularly if they are the widow and if they are from the poor family. Another one point, what she discussed about the book is the only friend. But my question is not the same. Book is the only friend to only those people who are educated, who are highly literate. Only for them, book is the only friend in this COVID-19 situation or in other situation also. But for the people who are illiterate, who are from the poor people, particularly from the rural areas, there is no scope of any kind of book reading or getting a book, single book. So this is a major question mark is there, that book should be the only friend, but if they are highly literated. And what she recommended about the awareness, no madam, not awareness, rather sensitization. Awareness is just superficial type of knowledge, but we want to change the attitude of each and every individual of the country, for which awareness is not sufficient. We need sensitization, and we need a curriculum, a separate type of educational program in both the school, college, and universities to study about this type of this program. So there must be such type of program, and at least at now we can study such type of program as the certificate program or diploma program in geriatric science and counseling. Thanks, Madam Upasana Ghosh from Rabindra Bharati University for such a very good paper. So
Thank you, sir.
now I can conclude that 5 different types of papers on geriatric problem, geriatric science, senior citizens have discussed, one from United States, others from our country, from Kerala, from Bangladesh also, that is the 2 papers from abroad and 3 papers from here, and amongst the 5 papers, 2 papers from Ravindra Bharati University. So this is very interesting and hopeful that the students of Ravindra Bharati University, they are truly interested for further higher study in the field of geriatric science and or about the senior citizens. But I would expect at least 1 paper. I would expect in future at least 1 paper about those senior citizens who remain in the home, those who are bound to go outside the family. Nobody is truly interested to go outside the family, but they remain outside the family. They remain in the old age home. Their situation in general, their situation during the COVID-19, we should study in depth. So thanks to Ravindra Bharati University, thanks to Sanjay Jadhav, thanks to Mrs. Parveen Madam, and thanks to all the paper presenters, as well as all the audience for supporting us for this type of program. Thanks to all. Thanks. So good noon now it is. So Parveen Madam, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much. Your presence made the session a lot more informative, captivating, and analytical as your lead made the presentations illustrious. Thank you so very much, sir. Now, I would also like to thank...
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Now, I would also like to thank all the participants for presenting their papers and adding on to our knowledge and making the session a lot more illustrious. It was really very interesting and engaging. Thank you all. Well, today's session was undoubtedly informative and illuminating. It was a great experience listening to all the speakers and paper presenters. Once again, on behalf of the Department of Disability Studies and Department of Human Rights and Human Development, I would like to say a big thank you to all the honorary guests, presenters, and participants for being a part of the webinar and enriching the session. We will be looking forward to listen to all the eminent speakers of the upcoming days. So see you all again tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. sharp with our next panel on LGBTQI. Till then, stay safe and cautious and have a great day ahead. Goodbye.
Thank you, Parveen.
Goodbye.
Thank you.